On a cold November afternoon, when the sun dipped early and the wind pushed dry leaves across the empty schoolyard, a young teacher named Hamza stood frozen by the window of his dimly lit classroom. He had stayed back late to finish grading the worn notebooks that piled on his desk, each one a reminder of the kids who came from families with little but carried dreams larger than the cracked walls around them. As he rubbed his tired eyes, he noticed a tiny figure sitting alone under the old banyan tree outside. A girl no more than 7, her shoulders trembling, her face buried in her hands, crying as if the world had forgotten her. And in that moment, something told him that this was no ordinary after-school moment. Something was about to unfold that would change many lives, including his own, in ways he never imagined. If you believe in stories of kindness, compassion, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us spread more heart-touching stories like this one. Hamza rushed down the corridor, the dusty floorboards creaking under his hurried steps. The school was almost silent, except for the echo of his footsteps and the faint rustling of the wind. As he approached the girl, he noticed her small school bag lying open, its contents scattered, a broken pencil, 2 bread slices wrapped in paper, and a drawing of what looked like a house with 3 stick figures, one missing a face. The sight of it tightened something in his chest. He knelt beside her, gently gathering the things from the ground and placing them back in her bag. She lifted her face, tears streaking her cheeks, her eyes wide with fear, loss, and exhaustion. Hamza knew those eyes, the eyes of a child carrying burdens no child should. He took her to his classroom, sat her on a chair, and warmed some leftover tea on the small stove he used during long grading nights. As she sipped quietly, he watched her hands shake around the cup. She refused to tell him her name at first, but with a little patience, she whispered at Mira. Then the pieces began falling into place. Her mother had passed away last year. Her father worked long hours, and she often waited by herself for him to pick her up. But today, he hadn't come. She didn't want to go home alone, and she didn't want to call him because she didn't want to bother him. That word, bother, told Hamza more than anything else. Hamza, who came from a poor background himself, understood loneliness better than most. His own father had been absent for much of his life, chasing jobs from city to city, while Hamza's mother worked endlessly to feed them. That history had shaped him into a teacher who treated every child as if they were his own, because he knew what it meant to feel forgotten. He called the emergency number listed in the school records and left a message. It was getting dark. He decided he'd wait with Mira until someone came. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. The school grounds turned pitch black, illuminated only by the yellow glow from the streetlights. Hamza sat beside Mira on the front steps, telling her stories of hope disguised as little jokes, trying to pull at least one smile out of her grief. Finally, a sleek black car screeched to a stop outside the school gate. Hamza stood up, his heart tightening as a tall, weary-looking man stepped out, a man with expensive clothing, sorrow-filled eyes, and strands of gray at his temples that looked far older than his age. The man rushed toward Mira and scooped her tightly into his arms. He apologized breathlessly to both Mira and Hamza, explaining that he had been trapped in an emergency meeting. It wasn't until he lifted his face toward Hamza that something in his expression changed. It wasn't anger or irritation, it was confusion mixed with recognition, as if seeing Hamza brought old memories back to life. Hamza dismissed it politely and reassured him that Mira had been safe, but the man kept staring as if searching for the right words locked deep inside. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled slightly as he thanked Hamza, a thank you that sounded like it carried a decade of guilt. He introduced himself simply as Mr. Arif, keeping his position and identity hidden for the moment. But when the car door opened, Hamza caught a glimpse inside documents, a polished briefcase, and the unmistakable logo of Arif Industries, one of the nation's largest companies. He recognized it from the news. This man wasn't just a father, he was a CEO. A widowed CEO, if rumors were true. But Hamza never judged people by their status. He only cared about the child standing beside him. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Mira began seeking Hamza after school almost daily. Sometimes it was homework help. Sometimes it was just quiet company. Her father, too, began appearing more often, always looking tired, always dressed in formals, and always grateful. Yet something about him felt broken beyond just grief. There were days he looked at Hamza strangely, with a mixture of longing and regret that didn't make sense at first. One evening, when the sky burned orange and children rushed out of school, with laughter echoing in the halls, Hamza found Mira sitting in his classroom again, tracing lines on her notebook. She asked if she could wait for her father because he had told her he'd try to come early. Hamza didn't mind. As they waited, he noticed her drawing again the same house with 3 stick figures. This time, the missing face was slowly being drawn in, but shakily, as if she wasn't sure what it should look like. Hamza gently asked if it was her mother. Mira nodded silently, Before Hamza could say anything else, footsteps echoed outside. Mira lit up. She ran to the door. But as her father entered, Hamza noticed something was different. The CEO looked troubled, nervous, almost vulnerable. He asked if he could speak with Hamza alone for a moment. What happened next felt like the unraveling of a secret buried for decades. Inside the classroom, with children's drawings taped to the walls and the faint smell of chalk hanging in the air, the CEO finally spoke with a shaking voice. He told Hamza he recognized him from somewhere not recent but from many years ago. He asked whether Hamza was the son of a woman named Shahana. Hamza froze. That was his mother. She had passed away years earlier, and then the CEO confessed something that made Hamza's legs nearly give way beneath him. Hamza's father, whom he hadn't seen in almost 20 years, had once worked for the CEO's company. The CEO had met Hamza briefly when he was a child. His father had disappeared soon after, overwhelmed by debts and failures he couldn't face. For years, the CEO had searched for Hamza's family quietly, hoping to offer support, to make amends for something he had never forgiven himself for, pushing Hamza's father too hard, expecting too much, and unintentional, being part of the reason he walked away from his family. Hamza didn't know whether to be angry, shocked, or grateful. Memories of his childhood, his father's absence, his mother's tears flooded back. But the CEO's eyes weren't the eyes of a powerful man. They were the eyes of a man haunted by loss, not only the loss of his wife, but also the lives he believed he had damaged along the way. Before Hamza could respond, Mira tugged at her father's sleeve and insisted that they all go get ice cream together. For a moment, time paused. Hamza looked at the little girl whose innocence had unknowingly stitched together two broken pasts. He looked at the man who carried guilt like a shadow. And somehow he felt no anger, just the weight of how fate sometimes works in ways we don't understand. In the weeks that followed, a strange but beautiful bond formed. The CEO Arif began visiting the school more often, volunteering when he could, funding small repairs anonymously, and always spending time with Mira. Slowly, Hamza saw glimpses of who the man truly was before grief had swallowed him whole. A father who adored his daughter, a man trying to become better, and someone who wished to right the wrongs of his past. And Mira, sweet, bright Mira, began to shine again. Her drawings grew colorful. Her laughter returned, and she often held Hamza's hand as if he were someone who made her world safer. One rainy afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Arif invited Hamza to his home. It was grand, spacious, filled with silence, and framed photos of a smiling woman, Mira's mother. Hamza felt humbled. As they sat in the living room, Arif finally shared the full truth. He revealed that his wife's last wish was for him to find kindness again, not in wealth, but in people. He admitted he had failed to honor that wish, until he saw Hamza kneeling beside his crying daughter that day after school. He confessed that seeing Hamza was like seeing the kindness he always wished existed in himself. Then came the most unexpected part. Arif wanted to sponsor the school where Hamza taught, provide better classrooms, libraries, scholarships, everything children like Mira and others deserved. But he didn't want to do it alone. He wanted Hamza to help him lead an educational foundation dedicated to children who came from broken homes or difficult circumstances. A foundation named after Mira's mother. Hamza was speechless. He had always wished to do more for his students, but life had never given him the means. And now, the opportunity came not as charity, but as a chance to heal wounds, his and Arif's, through generosity and purpose. Months passed. The school transformed. Classrooms were renovated. Students received new books, uniforms, and meals. And every time Hamza walked the halls, he saw what hope looked like when it was given the chance to bloom. Mira often ran ahead of him, carrying boxes of supplies, laughing loudly, reminding him that all of this began with one moment of compassion under an old banyan tree. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the power of kindness, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps bring more uplifting stories to life. As the story nears its end, we ask one more time. Before we finish, comment below. Kindness can change everything. And so, life moved forward. Hamza found a purpose larger than himself. Mira found a world filled with love again. And Arif found healing not in wealth or success, but in the very thing his wife had wished for him to rediscover: humanity. The teacher who once struggled to afford chalk now stood at the center of a movement of compassion and education. And the CEO who had once lost everything found a new beginning through the simple kindness shown to his daughter.